Tom from CarbonTrail here. Now, last time I introduced the emissions measurement planning canvas, alongside a bit of an explanation about how it all came together. In this session, we'll introduce an example company and run through setting up the canvas for them. Hopefully, it will help you visualise the journey for your own organisation. By the way, we've included links to the canvas in the description below. So, our example company, Whitewater Tours. They're a tourism company here in New Zealand offering whitewater rafting. They've been asked by a tour provider to provide an emissions estimate, which they're doing for all of their other providers. The company has two premises, a head office that they share with another company, and a boat shed and operational area that they use for storing equipment and for staff use. It's a small team, only 3 core staff and some contractors for busier months. And increasingly they're hiring younger staff that take sustainability seriously. They do not have a dedicated sustainability person on the staff. In fact, the head of operations is leading this work alongside the owner. They already recycle what they can and have paid for 100% renewable energy from a local power provider. They still have a diesel fleet of utes, which are important given the rugged nature of their operations. For example, they need to go into rutted fields and potentially on the riverbed. Let's run through the canvas together and help them plan out their journey.
Cool, so here we are in the Miro template. We talked about Miro before. It's this online whiteboarding tool, which is pretty cool. If you want to follow along and you've printed it out, that's absolutely fine as well. Instead of these virtual post-it notes, you can just use real ones. Just try not to use too many or waste any. This is a sustainability channel after all. Right, so here we go. And the purpose of this canvas again is just to get us thinking about the different types of people inside the organisation that can give us a hand, where those roadblocks might be, what requirements we might have as a business, and any of the things that we want to do. So, of course, we're Whitewater Tours. We're giving them a hand with this particular canvas. So, like I mentioned before, they're a tourism company that do whitewater rafting. They're a smallish business. So let's just get started right away and we'll just make the canvas about Whitewater Tours. So let's put Whitewater Tours in here. So that's easy. And we can then look at putting the goal and the purpose in. So the reason that they want to do this is because they've been asked by a tour provider to provide an emissions estimate. So this is becoming more and more common where you've got other businesses that aren't your own, your customers effectively, asking for emissions information. So the reason that they're doing this is because, a tour companies ask for more information so that they can put that as part of their itinerary. So we need to be able to prove our sustainability credentials to a customer, the tour operator. Cool. That's nice and easy. And the next thing here is, do you have a deadline for achieving this goal? So the reason that we put this in here is because having kind of time-bounded things is really important. So the tour company has asked for information about this previous financial year and they need that within the next few months so that they can start putting that together for marketing materials and so on. So where are we now? We're on the 30th of May, so they need this information by the end of July. So we'll say end of July. So not long, but very achievable if you're using the right tools. So let's think about who our champions are. So in this organisation, there's a couple of full-time core staff, and in the example that we're giving, the head of operations is leading the charge. So the champions here, so if we're pretending to be the head of operations, we can drag this example, and we've already made one for head of operations, look at that. So the head of operations is a champion here. We've also found out that the CEO is a champion. They're behind this, which is great. It's always so good to have like leaders, founders, exec as part of this sort of champions team, because they can open so many doors, right? If it's just a really, really, really enthusiastic team, but it's lower down in the organization, there's not that top-down buy-in, it's really hard. Now, it's worth noting, we are going to produce some templated business case documentation here that you can share up to the organization to make things a bit easier. So that's the champions and the stakeholders. So obviously we've got the folks internally that we've just mentioned, But the main stakeholder here is the tour operator, right? They're interested in the results of this. It's also fair to say that the board of this organisation is likely to be interested in this information. And we also found out that this company is increasingly hiring younger folks, right? And certainly from CarbonTrail's perspective, we've learned that it's increasingly important, certainly to the younger generation, to be working in organisations where they're taking this stuff really seriously, and so they should. So it's imperative from an employee attraction and retention perspective. So employees, both current and future, right? So that's cool. Future. Is there anyone else? No, I think that's all good. So we've now got champions and stakeholders. I like to make the stakeholders cards a different colour just so it's easy to see them in the future. We've also got some examples over here as well, right? So if you're doing your own, there's a couple of jumping off points. Cool, so what are the requirements? Like, why are we actually doing this? So we've kind of talked about this in the purpose. Sometimes your kind of overarching purpose might be different to kind of the specific requirements. A classic case of this is, well, has the tour operator asked for your information in a certain format? So we talked at the beginning in the kind of key terms video about different types of measurements. So the two popular ones are the ISO standard, ISO 1464, and the GHG protocol. So the tour operator has asked for this information in the GHG protocol standard. It's pretty standard format. Emissions to be exported in the GHG protocol format. So that is scope 1 to 3, and then with 3 broken down. And we can talk about what that means in a minute. And what else have we got here? So the requirements. So obviously it needs to be done by a certain time. It needs to be complete, ready for end of July. So that means for us to kind of have the emissions estimate completed and, have some time to kind of review it, make sure it makes sense, let's aim for kind of mid-July. So that's a kind of a pretty key requirement here. And what else have we got here? Probably worth noting the requirement around the utes. And utes, if you're listening from outside of Australia, New Zealand, is a utility vehicle, a pickup truck. So this company, they're doing whitewater rafting tours, right? So there's going to be a lot of getting into the river. There might be situations where they have to tow the boat. There might be situations where they have to provide assistance, first aid, emergency kind of pickup, that sort of stuff. So they've got the utes, and this is a diesel fleet. So from what we've learned about the organisation, they are unsure whether they can move away from those utes. So a requirement could be retain use of utes. But of course, a measurement's one thing, a reduction's another. So what we could say is explore the use of hybrid vehicles, right? Now, this company is out in the sticks a little bit, so we'd need to make sure it makes sense from a kind of a charging perspective. But I think we should look into that. We should always be identifying those opportunities and those kind of quick wins. Cool, so what risks, constraints, and opportunities exist? So let's have a look at a couple of examples here. So we've put the opportunity examples in green. So increased competitiveness, this is really important, being able to stand out from the crowd. And actually it's quite cool that there's a tour operator here that's asking for this information, because that seems to be a bit of a growing kind of trend. The operators wanting to know the overall emissions of a given the itinerary. Improved employee engagement and attraction. So we've already said that is a key opportunity for us, so we can drag that right in, that's easy. I think it's fair to say that the competitiveness one is relevant for this organisation, so we can pop that in there as well. Compliance and regulation, that's not really come up for this business yet. It'll be a while, I think, before that kind of trickles down, but it is definitely worth thinking about. Cost savings is an opportunity. It might be that they can find some cost savings here. It's not the main driver of this one. And let's talk about risks. So yeah, you've got to consider the costs of, whether you're hiring a consultant based on the outputs of Canvas, whether it's using some software, whether it's using, a spreadsheet doing things yourself. There's a sliding scale of, free on one hand, but, requires a fair bit of effort, all the way up to incredibly expensive with, hiring a dedicated sustainability consultant to do this for you. So it's worth noting, just like every other small business that we talk to, upfront costs and tight budgets are risks and a constraint for us. The risk of greenwashing is one that's basically true for most businesses. If you go ahead and make claims that turn out not to be true or that are bending the truth, that can certainly come back to bite you over the long term. So yeah, that's a big risk. And then the complexity of the measurement. So that is a risk usually for kind of larger businesses. For this business, there's two premises. It's a reasonably straightforward operation. They don't have subsidiaries. They don't have investments, excuse me, in other businesses. So that makes things a bit more straightforward. So I'm not going to call that one out as a risk right away. So, other goals, targets, and KPIs. So, of course, just looking at your emissions is one thing. That can be a bit of what we call like a lagging indicator, right? It's like looking in the rearview mirror. It's something that's kind of happened and you're then going to do something about it rather than a leading indicator that's going to help you kind of make some changes. So what have we got in the examples here? So emissions reduced, eliminating paper waste, employee NPS. Okay, so these are generally lagging, but what we could say, certainly the rate of Gen Z hired, we could make that a more leading indicator by making that take place sooner. So we hire, so it's employ, because these are contractors, remember, employ contractors based on our sustainability credentials. So that's cool. And what other things could we be looking at here? So I think we want to be looking at the amount that we get through this tour operator, right? Because if we are showing that, hey, we're actually quite a low carbon operation and it's between us and maybe someone that's not prepared to give some information, or someone that is in a position of, you know, they're a higher emitting operator, well, it might be that we end up getting more business, right? So it's booking rate via the tour operator, right? That's pretty cool. You know, this is how we're improving the bottom line, just by kind of showing that we're taking a bit more care of the planet. One of the things that's mentioned as well is we do a little bit of recycling. So maybe we could also be looking at decreasing the amount of waste going to landfill by 2025, for example. So we could make that a bit more smart. Cool. So that's the canvas there. So just to recap, we need to prove those sustainability credentials to the customer, the tour operator. We've got the head of operations and the CEO as the main kind of champions, the main folks that are going to be pushing this forward. They might pull other people in, right? They might pull external folks in. They might start using some software, right? But they are the kind of the key team. We've got the stakeholders, so that's sort of outside of the business in this example, the tour operator themselves, the board, the employees, both current and future. We've got these requirements that for some reason I didn't put as post-it notes, but you get the idea. We need to get this ready kind of mid-July, really. We need to be exporting the emissions in the GHG protocol format, which is what the tour operators asked for. And then we're talking about whether we retain the use of the utes. We might not. We're going to explore what hybrid vehicles look like. Risk, constraints and opportunities. We're trying to improve employee engagement and attraction. We're trying to be more competitive in the market. There is a bit of a risk around the upfront costs and, you know, tight budgets, people not having much time, and then that risk of greenwashing. And then the targets, goals and KPIs side of things. So employee in contractors based on the credentials. That'd be amazing if we can see people coming in based on that. Increasing that booking rate, so like tracking that booking rate via the tour operator, has doing this made any tangible difference? And we want to decrease the amount of waste going to landfill as well. So that's awesome. Cool, so the next part here, and this is where I'll draw this video to a close once we talked about this, and we'll go on to the next part of the canvas next time, is just getting something set up, right? So I've always been a big fan of having that accountability, having that cadence in place, so that the champion group are able to meet. It's a regular thing, people know when it's coming up, they've got hopefully some progress to share. So we've put that the champions will meet every Monday at 9 AM. Awesome. And the responsible person here is Jane Doe, because she's the head of operations, she's driving it forward. So the next step here would be putting that calendar invite in place and getting your champions invited in and getting that locked in. Right, thanks for joining me on this one. Hopefully it makes a bit more sense. I would love to see what it looks like for your organization. So if you want to send a message or drop us an email, if you've got any questions, just feel free to drop them in. Yeah, I'm Tom from CarbonTrail, and see you next time. Cheers.